Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. This is Terry and today I am really excited to talk about a video that has been in the works for quite a while, and thought that it was sort of a failed project because I had lost the list, but I did find it recently. And so what I'm talking about is something that I've referred to many times. I don't think I've ever shown this, but I have talked about it plenty of times. What I am talking about is my very first list of orchids, my wish list that I made when I got my greenhouse. Now, prior to me getting the greenhouse, I never got any orchids from a nursery per se. They were all from grocery stores. At the time when I started growing orchids, I was living in Chicago in the city, and on my way home from work after I got off the L walking back to my apartment, I would pass by a cleaner, and it was a cleaner on one side, but they had a rack, and from the window you could just see rows of cattleyas. And one day I went in there and literally the plants were like 25, 30 bucks, and they were blooming size cattleya plants. And that's how I started with orchids. And at the same time, I would go up north in the Wells area, Wells Street, north of North Avenue. That area has a florist shop there that I used to go to. I think it's still there. It's called Green. And I would go in there, and they had big cattleyas and orchids in the window. And I would go in there and look at the plants because at the time I had no reference for them other than books. And the only one that I probably had seen in person was dendrobiums, just from trips to Hawaii. Well, at the time I didn't even know the variety of orchids. My scope was limited to dendrobiums, cattleyas, and Phalaenopsis. So going into this florist shop called Green to look at the orchids, on my way out one day, I noticed that they had it was like a little tin bucket, and it was full of just bare root dendrobiums, just sitting there. And so I asked the owner, and she said, just take them. And so I would bare mount them in bark and let them sit for a little while, water them, and then let them sit until they started to do something, and they all bloomed for me. But that was, so then I moved back here to Champaign and got moved up from orchids on my back porch, which was just a sunroom, not heated. And then I decided to do a greenhouse because my orchids were not protected in the winter. Couldn't keep it heated enough. So this is my very first list, to make a long story short. And it's interesting because I was making this at the Spadari, the Hotel Spadari in Milan. I haven't stayed there in, God, it's been a long time. So anyway, this really is true to form. And you can see the very first thing on my list is Paraphelanopsis. And I'm pretty sure that was Lubecensis. And I did get a Lubecensis, and it bloomed for me. I had it for about a year. It bloomed for me the year after I got it. And then it slowly declined. The Tourette style leaves just fell right off. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and find each of these plants so that there is a reference point to what I am talking about. And you all know me, my book is so, you know what I'm trying to say. It's just tattered. But anyway, I will find Paraphelanopsis because I am pretty sure it's in this book. And yeah, here we go. Okay, this is the plant that I'm talking about, Paraphelanopsis, and it did have a cinnamon fragrance to it. So Paraphelanopsis, they're from Borneo, I believe. Yeah, Borneo. Used to be in, did it used to be in Phalaenopsis? Yes. And then you cultivate them generally on a slab They like free draining water, otherwise conditions as a Phalaenopsis. Although when I had mine was sitting on the east side of the greenhouse, pretty high up, and it was mounted. Anyway, and it did have that cinnamon scent. That was mostly at night. But there again, bear in mind, this was when I was still, well, I'm still learning about orchids, but my greenhouse was very new. I did not have the humidity worked out. I think I had the exhaust working. I had fans for air movement. I had heaters, but I did not have the humidity until later on. But just to give you a general reference. So that is the first plant that was on my list. Okay, and the next one on the list is Irides Odorata. And you know, I just got an Irides, and this is interesting because it has the prices. And I know that I was ordering this from a place in Hawaii that is not anymore in, they're no longer in existence. Orchids Delight, Orchids Galore. Anyway, it was in Honolulu or Hawaii. Somewhere, this is where I was ordering these plants from. So anyway, the next one is Irides Odorata. Irides. I just got an Irides Odorata, and you remember it bloomed for me very beautifully. And the fragrance lasted a while on the plant, even as the flowers were going over. So Irides Odorata, of course, is in the Vanda tribe. Occurs throughout tropical Asia, India, pendant racemes of white flowers stained with 5 showy purple patches, which is definitely what it is. Strong, spicy scent. Fall flowering, vigorous species. Mine is not doing so well. It is, well, I probably had it in a really bad place, although this says it likes unrestrained. Most of the active will be aerial, bright light, frequent watering, heavy feeding. See, I haven't fed, I didn't feed, so that's my problem. There's a picture from the book, and I'll post my picture. This book, if you're not familiar with me using the books, I can't remember everything. I try. This is the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Orchids, which is Snowden, Pridgeton. This one is the Botanicas Orchids. So I'm going to split this into parts, but I'm going to keep going. The next one is Aranthy's Grandiflora. Now, if you know me, you know that I love my Angricoids. They're my favorite. And I believe at the time of this list, Aranthy's Grandiflora wasn't even available from this nursery. I believe they sent me a Onrichi, which was a complete failure. But anyway, Grandiflora is here. I do have one in the greenhouse. It has flowered for me before. The Aranthys are air plants, of course, Vanda tribe. Aranthys, they grow in tropical forests in deep shade, humid conditions in cultivation, moisture retentive compost. Needs to be suspended because they get long inflorescence that then go and hang down. Grandiflora is not fragrant. From Madagascar, of course, it is one of the largest of the Aranthys. And there is flower that is Aranthys. Okay, the next one is Irides Mitrata, which is not Irides anymore. It's actually Pseudonymphata. And let me see if I can figure out which book that is in. I'm not sure if it's in this one or the other one. Yeah, see, it's not in this one. Anyway, these books are the best thing when there was no other reference for me. I always have had this one, but I only got this one maybe 10 years ago. But they're useful because of just the information, cultural wise, and just where they, where they originate from, their native environment. So Pseudonophyta used to be Irides. You can see Irides grows on trees, exposed situations in sort of medium, moderate altitudes, 1,000 feet to 5,000. Heavy seasonal rainfall. It's very short stem. Flowers in spring. Densely packed, fragrant flowers. Now, I have for years had Pseudonophyta, or, well, it was always been Pseudonophyta. And for me, my issue with Pseudonophyta was the issue with whether or not you were watering it too much or watering it not enough. Because the Tourette style orchids are tricky for me in that they do like to be mounted, they need to be mounted, and they don't like to dry out, but it's a fine balance between giving them too much and not enough. And in that regard, I did have a Pseudonophyta mitrata that put up spikes, and the spikes would blast whether I didn't water them or or after I would water the plant or miss the plant, they would blast. Even if I withheld water, the spikes would blast. And also it had an issue with, the leaves, the Tourette style leaves just falling off from rot just without any warning, or just overnight I'd come in and there would be just leaves on the ground. So I would have no idea how they got there. But anyway, very pleasing plant, very fragrant. One that, I still have on my list, but is very close to being off my list. But this is my very first list. But anyway, I'm just going to keep moving. And the last one that I'm probably going to do is Erudina Griminifolia, which I will, at the time, I have no reference to how I picked some of these plants. Some of them make sense, but this one in particular, I'm not sure that it does make sense. And that's not it. It's in here. But Erudina, I believe, is known as the Bamboo Orchid. And as soon as I saw it, I was just like, there's no way. No, I don't see it in this one. I know that I have it, but it's known as the Bamboo Orchid, and it gets very big, kind of similar to Sobralias. And, okay, I guess maybe I didn't go too far. Well, okay, anyway, if I don't, there we go. Erudina Griminifolia, large, erect terrestrial plant, 60 to 100, 1.5, 2.5 meters tall. Anyway, flowers occur throughout the year. Inflorescence is terminal up to 12 inches. Species has been naturalized in the Hawaiian Islands. But from these regions, all terrestrial, cultivated outdoors, anyway, warm environments. Very pretty flower, but just way out of the scope of what I can grow here. But it was on my list. And I will go on with this one, Faye's Tankerville, before I stop this video. Faye's Tankerville is one of those that at the time, as I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So I lost a lot of plants, as we all do. That is part of the hobby. But Faye's was one that I completely failed because I was treating it. First off, it is a big plant. Faye's are big plants. And it was difficult for me to find a spot in my greenhouse for the Faye's. because they are so big. And so it was sitting on the floor, which was my next mistake, because they bloom towards the end of the season, you know, fall into spring. And so I would have them in my greenhouse and they would be sitting on the floor. Back then, I did not heat my greenhouse so much in the winter, so these were not good. Fayes like very warm conditions. They like moisture. They do like shade, but they do like warmth. And Fayes Tankerville is right here, very lovely thing. And there are lots of hybrids that are also very beautiful. But yeah, sheltered, moist, swampy, hot conditions. Anyway, that is Fayes Tankerville. And I am going to stop this video and I will continue on with the next part. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your orchids.